Sheriff
4,
Department.
3, 2.
Good evening, Canada and hockey fans across the United States and Newfoundland. Welcome to the American Conservative Values Network. I'm Mike Swope, where we engage in dialogue here to extend and protect those values that have made America the greatest nation on earth. Joining me today are my friends Pam Devaney, who is a project manager consultant, small business owner from Leone Township in Jackson County. She also has served and currently serves on some public boards. And to my left is Vincent Green, a lawyer from Lansing, Michigan. So if you get into trouble in that area, make sure you go see him. He's a good man to see. He will help protect your rights. Before we get into our show, I have a very important announcement, and it'll come as a surprise to my guests because I didn't get a chance to tell them about it. We are going to extend our reach for you because we know that there's a lot of people that want to watch us that don't have Comcast in southern Michigan, and we also know that our broadcast partner has been kind of inconsistent with how they've been airing the shows. So we are extending our reach, trying to get to as many people as we can, and it's our goal to put our shows on YouTube. We have our first 2 shows from 2013 already posted. So if you go to YouTube, search ACVN-TV 1776. You can see it right there on the screen. YouTube search ACVN-TV 1776, and that should take you to all the shows that we have posted. We want to try to get the shows posted as soon as possible after taping so that you can see them on a timely basis. The other thing is that for folks that don't have Comcast, you can watch YouTube on the computer, you can watch YouTube on your smartphone, or you can watch YouTube if you have a cable or satellite box or a Blu-ray player that is hooked up to the internet. They all have YouTube apps. So tell your friends they can now watch us on YouTube. We also have a Facebook page. If you look for American Conservative Values Network, should take you right to our page. Like that page so you can keep up to date with things. So, and again, we won't have everything posted immediately after because most of us are volunteers here, but we're going to do our best as we can to get the shows posted as soon as we can so that you can see them and so your friends can see them too. So make sure that you tell folks that we are on the World Wide Web again, and we're happy to do that. So that's going to I think that's going to be good for us to try to get to some more people and to try to get some more people informed. And Vincent, before the show, you were telling us a story, and I think that's a good place for us to start today because we're taping it. We're still early in the new year of 2013, and New Year is a time for reassessment of where we want to go in life, where what we want to do as a society. And why don't you tell the folks briefly tell the folks that story, because there's some issues there that I think we need to discuss.
Well, Mike, and I wanted to, and I'm not going to say this gentleman's name and the type of crime because I don't want to compromise our case, but I do have a young man, and this could be the similar story and analogy to hundreds of my clients over the years. I've got a young man that's charged with a major crime, and it was just interesting in getting to know him and talk to him. A lot of things that concern me, that some that we do recognize and that we see all the time, that fit a pattern with this young man. Comes from a single parent family.
Specifically, he's with a mother.
With mother.
No father.
And be no father. It's never. In fact, this gentleman has never even met his father.
Right.
He also, because of the constraints and the stresses of mom's life, of his mother's life, he's living with his grandparents.
Okay.
He also, which is not unusual, is not finished any formal education. He doesn't even have a high school degree. He dropped out when he was like 8th grade or a freshman in high school. Not even working on a GED. He's never had a job.
I think it's probably safe to say that he probably was not performing at grade level when he dropped out.
I would dare to guess. And so, and I started talking to him, and I mean, sometimes, trying to talk to these young men, and just because the color of our skin is very similar, we are as far apart as a car and a bicycle.
Right.
I mean, you know, but trying to talk to him to find out his dreams, his goals, his desires, there are none there.
Sure.
Right.
He doesn't have, I mean, he's not into music. He's not into arts. He's not into sports. He doesn't read. And that could be for a lot of different reasons.
Right.
But I'm thinking, you know, this
Unable
gentleman now, I mean, he's in his early 20s. What does he have? Where is he going? Let's say I pull my miracle and get him out of the trouble he's in, which there's likely he won't spend that much time in jail. What's he going to do with his life? And we're losing a generation of people that really, especially these young men, but women are, with equal rights, women are catching up too.
Absolutely, yeah.
We're losing this generation where, I mean, what are they going to do? I mean, and he has a little baby too.
Oh, he has a baby too.
Yeah, he has a baby.
So we have somebody depending on him.
So a baby, yeah. So
when he
is a
can't
baby
even depend
raising
on
a-
himself.
Well, a baby that
Yeah.
should be depending on it.
Exactly. So, I mean, just those are the type of things. You know, my dad is an educator, as you know, and he still deals with a lot of youth like that in similar situations where, you know, he sees them now when they're 12 or 13. When they're at school, they have to sleep half a day because of the violence going on at home and the issues there. But we are losing a full generation now of our youth, and it saddens me. And you know, we try to do as much as we can, but there's a lot of issues here. And I'm
Sure.
not, you know,
Lots
when
of
I
them.
talk, I'll talk about a single mom. My law partner is a single mom. She had her first child. She was married at the time with her first child, but was going through a divorce, raising a child, and getting her undergraduate master's degree.
Outstanding.
And then she went on to Lansing, worked as a Department of Corrections officer in administrative capacity as a parole officer at the Department of Corrections for a few years, decided to go to law school, came up here, got pregnant again, and was put herself through school. Now, I don't recommend that. It sounds like she
No.
gets pregnant and does well in school. I don't recommend that. But when she hears about single mothers talk about, well, I've got these children, it's a setback, I can't go to school, I can't do this, she says, malarkey.
Right on. Amen, sister.
And she is able to do it, but you do see that pattern. You see that pattern of single moms and these young men that are being raised, and they just have no vision, no dreams, no goals.
Well, you know, this is something that I've referred to many times on the show, and it's not necessarily something that's particular to single parents, or for that matter, as often expected, to parents from lower socioeconomic classes, but a general failure that parents are there are too many parents that aren't raising their children.
Right. Yes.
You know, and this is, and I think that the example of the client that you talked about is yet one more example of this, where there's a failure to, and given what you've told us, it sounds like your client's mother really didn't put much effort into raising.
Sure.
Raising the child.
You got truancy issues. You got all sorts of, friend of the court issues. You got, he's sounded like he's an angry person. He's not interested in school. I mean,
Well, not necessarily angry, but
I guess that was pre-talk.
I guess there's no there.
It's really almost
There's no
right.
there.
Yeah.
In talking to him, I just felt, I was telling him before we got on the air, it was kind of interesting. I visited him a while back in the jail, and after we got done with our meeting, I was waiting for the deputy to come get us because he has to go back to a certain part of the jail. And so we sat, and I was trying to make small talk with him. It was like talking to a rock.
Yeah.
I mean, it was very uncomfortable because
Right.
we're just, like I said, we're like night and day.
You can use the same words, but the ideas just don't transfer from one brain to the other.
And there's not, like you said, there's no there.
Yeah.
There really isn't. And whether he's angry or not, and he might be, he might be.
And he just
but
maybe allegedly committed a crime. So maybe that has changed him in some way mentally. Or maybe
But
he was
it's-
like that before that.
I wonder, and I guess when we talk about accountability and responsibility, and we all have similar values that, you've got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, even though we all get help. We all get assistance. We understand that.
I didn't get very much, and I was a single parent.
We get and we get. But I think I think that what is particular in the case that you're talking about, and with a lot of my students, because as a college professor, I see a lot of my students where they're just drifting. They're in the class. I get so many of them that are in class not because they want to be there or because they're trying to advance, but they're there because mommy and daddy told them that they need to get their butts off the couch or go get a job. And they would rather be in class and let mommy and daddy pay the bills than actually go get a job and fend for themselves.
That four-letter word, work.
Yeah. Or what was the 1950s TV character, the beatnik that Bob Denver played on Dobie Gillis.
Dobie Gillis, right.
Well, I'm similar to your partner, the lady you were talking about. I was a single parent. I went to school. I worked full time. I got my bachelor's degree. My son. The thing is that your children are watching you work too.
Yes.
I mean, if
they have to be a part of it.
They have to be a part of it. But he watched me work. He has phenomenal work ethics now. I can't say that's because of me, but I'm the same way. If I hear somebody say, well, I can't do this, I can't do that, bullpucky, you can, because I was in whatever. I got pregnant in high school. I was dyslexic. I had a speech impediment. I had 10 things against me. I lost my mother in high school, but at age 17, I went to college. I started college because that's what I needed to do. I had a child, and I didn't wait around for daddy, for the dad, and we just kept going. And so I don't understand how people can say, well, I can't do this, I can't do that. And the whole process of this person not knowing what they even want to do is amazing to me. And he's 20 years old.
Well, what's even worse in my mind is not the parents who say they can't, but the parents who just don't. And again, that goes back. That cuts across all socioeconomic classes, where parents aren't even bothering to raise their kids these days. Mm-hmm. It seems to me like there are so many people that have kids because it just seems like that's the thing to do.
Tradition.
You get to a certain age, or you've been together for so long, and so now it's time to have a kid. But I see so many people that have kids, but then when they have the kids, the kid's like a toy at Christmas. It's nice and new for a while, and then after that newness wears off, then the kid goes on the pile with all the things that they don't like, and the child isn't even in the top 5 of their priorities. So you have parents, and I was thinking about this a couple days ago. Think of how many people, you have so many mothers that go to work to pay for daycare. Mm-hmm. Why not just stay home with a kid? If you're working just to pay bills for daycare, why don't you stay home and raise your own child? That is one of the things that really sticks in my craw, is that there's so many parents that just they warehouse their kids, because really that's all you're doing when you're putting your kids in daycare. Yep. You're warehousing them, and the daycare is not raising your child. And and I know a lot of people, and these are people of some of some means, where they get up in the morning, they get ready to go about their day, they get the kid dressed, they take the kid to daycare, and then they go about their day, and then they come home, pick up the kid from daycare, put the kid into bed, and then the next day they start all over.
Again.
And they hardly spend any time with their kids. And
that's an ouchie, because that's because you kind of described what I did, but see, after a while, I began to make more money than daycare. So if daycare cost me $250 or $300, whatever, my son's in his 20s now. So, and so after a while, I made more money than daycare cost. And so that worked out. But I think that the accountability of the parents is, number one, when you have a child, you are to feed them. That's expected.
Well, not just the minimal, but not just feed, clothe, and shelter, but to actually raise your kids. And one of the things I'm fondest of saying is that every one time you're there to say no to your kid and make it stick is just as important as 100 times you're there to say yes. And and I remember, I remember my dad when we would talk about bad kids, and my dad would say, if you don't have them by the time they're 4 or 5, you'll never get them. And I think there's something to that.
Yikes!
And,
yikes!
Yeah.
Well, you know what? See, but my point I was trying to make is that you have a child. You're supposed to feed them. You're supposed to clothe them. You're supposed to give them a roof, and then you're supposed to take care of them with their any type of illnesses that they got, including mental illnesses too.
That's just the minimum.
You're right. But this kid right here, if somebody, he's 20 and he's saying this, if somebody asked him when he was 10 or 12, he should have been in with a doctor. He should have been said, "What's going on with this kid?"
But there should have been.
I'm just saying that would have been a red flag somewhere else.
Parent there setting some limits, setting some standards, teaching him how to read. It's the parent's job to teach your kids how to read, and that gets us into a side issue, which we'll talk about in another show, is the declining literacy in this country. There are fewer and fewer people reading. And so parents aren't reading, therefore their kids don't see them reading. The parents can't teach kids reading because they don't know how. But if you don't, but there's an even bigger failure, and that is that we have a failure to transmit the values, those values at this show. It's not just about political values that this show is about. This show is about social and cultural values, those things that have made this country the greatest nation ever on earth. And this show is about preserving those values, but also transmitting those values. And at the family level, that's what a parent is supposed to be doing.
Right.
And it amazes me that we can have, you need to have a license to cut hair.
Right, I know where you're going.
Yeah. You need to have a license to drive a car where we could teach animals how to drive a car.
You need to have a
my dog
license
wants
to
to
practice
drive
law.
my car.
Yeah, and even a license to practice law.
Yeah.
Can you believe that?
Well, I can't. But then I know a bunch of lawyers, so it's hard to believe they actually
take an
have
examination to be a project manager.
It does not take a license. It doesn't take any teaching, anything. It's to have a child.
To have a child.
That's amazing.
The most important job you can have.
Take care of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So a little Luther Vandross in a couple of minutes, you can have a child. So
yeah.
Well, and so I know that we have things sounding backwards. I mean, we could get into the whole issue of paying our athletes $15, $20, $30 million to run down the field or shoot a hoop and be successful 1/3 of the time. You're an all-star in baseball if you're successful 1/3 of the time.
Yeah, you're successful if you miss the ball 7 out of 10 times.
Exactly, and that's all fine and dandy. But when we're not paying our teachers, we're not paying our firefighters or our police officers.
But Vince, I hear that story all the time. Being a professor, I'm in 2 unions. I get mailboxes full of that stuff through the year. But it's not the job of schools to raise children.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah, it's not the job of poliece or firemen to raise children.
I want to hold on.
It is the job of the parents to raise children.
I think it's part of the job of the school because I actually, when I got laid off at General Motors, I actually was a substitute teacher. So I believe that it's the job of somebody at the school to raise some flags. Look, here's a note. Take it. Raise the flags. But to say nothing.
But my mother.
To say, hey, your kid might have something going on. Maybe you should take him to the doctor. Something to that effect.
Yes. Well, I was blessed to have 2 parents in the home.
Me too.
And in fact, they're still together. Can't believe it. In their late 70s.
That's great.
But driving each other up the wall. but my mother too. And it was interesting when. Showing my age here, when John F. Kennedy was assassinated, I always think of the story. I went home, I walked home and told my mom about it because it was on the TV at school. And what 2 things that I found interesting by that. One, I walked home.
Right.
I was able to walk home and be safe.
Yep.
2, my mother was home. And there for me, and she was all through elementary school and junior high school, my mother was the one, like a lot of mothers were, they came into the school. And what do they call them then?
Parapros or something like that?
Parent-teacher conferences?
Well,
or
but the day-to-day home, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Who would come in and help out, you know,
Yeah,
or help with the parties and help with.
Yeah, class moms.
Right, class mom, yeah. And I know there was a word for it, but but that's, you know, that was interesting. And when I raised Mikey, when I got divorced and I had 2 daughters, you know, I really appreciate the fact that I was in private practice of law because it allowed me to go on the field trips.
Yeah.
To come to the school for the parties,
Nice.
and it was interesting
Very
too.
nice.
I
You
could
set
always
yourself
tell
up for
the
that.
kids, especially the little boys that didn't have a dad, because they would attach to me. I want to sit next to Mr. Green. I want to sit next to Mr. Vince.
Yeah.
And my daughters would get so jealous, and I'd say,
Yeah.
you know, honey, you see me all the
You
time.
see me all that, yeah.
But I was there, and you got, like you said, you know, I sent my kids to school, to a public school, then we did send them to charter schools after that, and one to private school. But I was there.
Yep.
We were there. I was there at the school. Those teachers knew me, and they
Yes.
knew, you know, and
Yes.
it was no surprise. And that's what we had. We're losing that.
Yep.
We're losing that.
Yeah. and
I
there's-
helped them do their homework.
Right.
You know, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, to the point where I didn't know what they were.
I know, it got to a point like, I don't even know this.
Right. So.
But
I have a
you
college
know,
degree, I don't
you
even know this.
still, the thing is that you have to put forth the effort.
Yeah.
You know, you
Right,
cannot,
and it shows a lot just for your kid that you're putting
Right.
forth the effort. My parent loves me. That's just
Right.
showing
And to
when they
the-
leave
and to
with the
this day,
perception
at
of
age
that.
24, my oldest daughter still will send me, Dad, I just signed up for classes this semester.
Yep.
This is how much my books are going to cost, Dad. Wait. But, you know, Dad, I just got to be in this. I'm so disappointed I got to be in this. I'm going to try to do better. At 24, she's still doing that. It makes me
trying
feel
to.
good.
But just as with teachers, with parents, a lot of times, you don't know what the effect of the little things that you do is until many years later.
Exactly, I
And,
agree.
and that
I
harkens
agree.
back to what my
True.
dad said. If you have not instilled proper discipline in your kids by the time they're 4 or 5, you may never get them. You may never get there, and I'm firmly convinced that's one of the reasons why we have problems. For example, with the misdiagnosis of ADD and the misapplication of drugs like Ritalin is because people don't want to get the job done right. They just want the kid to be quiet. They want the kid to be complacent for a while.
They tried to label they didn't, before ADD, they tried to label my brother, and he was hyper and this and that.
Yep.
You know what my parents did? They bought him a drum set.
Yep.
He'd go beat on the drum set for 15, 20 minutes. He was great.
Yeah.
That's what he did. That was the cure.
That was the cure.
And
yeah.
it was fine.
Sure.
One thing, and one last, I don't know if we're done with this point. I know you want to talk about another issue, but one thing I will note again, and it's a shame too, when the parents, what I do for a living as a criminal defense attorney, when the parents or the parent gets involved, is when their kids are in cuffs.
That's right.
That's when the
A
kids
lot of
get
times-
involved.
A lot of times
You know
that's
what?
the first time you see
Do you know
them.
what that says?
Yeah.
That shows like this is the only time I'm concerned with you.
Right.
That's like so when you're bad, I'm going to give you attention.
Yep.
Right.
Wrong message.
Yep.
Way too late.
But yeah, you mentioned
I had to throw that
there was
out there.
another issue that I wanted to get in this show, and we've got just about 3 minutes. But there are a couple things that I want to get to, and we've been talking about parenting failures, and I think we need to talk in this show about constitutional failures, because in a way it's kind of the same thing where we're not passing down the values that we once had, and there's a couple of issues as we tape the second weekend of January of 2013. There's a couple things that have been bandied about that are very troubling. One of which is that this week, the Vice President Biden, in his task force on where they're trying to make a case for gun control in the wake of Newton. First, let me mention one other thing before I get to that. Former Governor Rendell of Pennsylvania said something to the effect of, the one good thing to come out of the Newton shootings was that it's going to galvanize the left into action to be able to counter the right and gun advocates. That, I think, is a totally reprehensible statement, because there's nothing good to come out of those shootings. Not one thing.
Right. That's true.
But that is an example of the left not letting a crisis go to waste. But it's totally reprehensible, and it shows what the left is, that they're so willing to jump on this issue and take advantage of it. But let me get back to Vice President Biden. Vice President Biden, and I think this was a trial balloon, said something about when in the proposal that there may be proposals for gun control, and said that President Obama may issue an executive order for that. Now, Vince, you're a lawyer, I'm a constitutional scholar, and we both know that an executive order can only pertain to a subject of law where the president has some derivative authority. That is, the authority has to be derived from either the Constitution or from a constitutionally approved statute. The President of the United States cannot issue a ukase, a decree. Right. So can you think of any place in federal law or in the Constitution where the President would have any executive authority to issue an order like that?
None.
And I can't either.
Absolutely none.
I can't either.
Absolutely none.
And I'm not just saying that as someone who shoots guns. Remember that, bad guys. But we also have another. Yep. So we believe in the right to bear arms. We do so legally, but there is no authority for the President of the United States to issue any decree for gun control legislation at all. None.
Mike, I'm a strict constructionist. I mean, the Constitution is the Constitution. It was well thought out at the time,
Right.
with the various
Unlike
amendments.
what Pierce Morgan says, where he keeps saying your little book.
Right.
Yeah.
No, well, yeah.
That's a
and
disrespectful
which is interesting,
saying.
considering I'll stay away from his
That's
nationality.
plain up
But
disrespect.
Second Amendment.
That's not
I had
allowed.
someone say to me the other day. This was my counter argument. I said, he said, well, when the founding fathers, wrote the Second Amendment, they didn't contemplate AK-47s. I said if you take that to extreme, then women didn't have the right to vote.
That's right.
Nor black folks.
Well, what's striking to me is how many people who, Obama talked about bitter clingers in the 2008 presidential campaign. So many of these press advocates and so many scholars who cling bitterly to the First Amendment want to disregard the Second
Amendment, right?
Right. So but if the Second Amendment's so bad, why not try to repeal it?
Exactly. See, we can get 2/3 of the states to do it.
If it doesn't pertain anymore, repeal it.
Right. And you might get Massachusetts,
maybe
Connecticut, maybe. But try to get the southwestern states to repeal it.
Yeah. One other issue that I've got to get to quickly because we're running short on time. Another thing that was brought up this week was the old saw that the president. There's a proposal for the president to unilaterally extend the debt limit, which he can't do. And I want, for our audience, I want to go to the specific part of the 14th Amendment. And that is Section 4 of the 14th Amendment. The validity of the public debt of the United States, authorized by law, including debts incurred for payment of pensions and bounties for services in suppressing insurrection or rebellion, shall not be questioned. Now, Vince, because we're running out of time, I'm going to give a real quick interpretation. Then you tell me if I'm on the right track. The president cannot extend the debt limit unilaterally, and when it says that the debt cannot be questioned, that just means that it's a constitutional affirmation that a debt that has been contracted under law, and that's nothing that these proponents of this executive action don't mention. It's got to be something authorized under law. It only means that debt is not going to be pulled into law and said, well, that debt's invalid. It does not mean that the federal government can do whatever it wants to and spend money however it wants. So that's another thing.
That is up to Congress.
That is up to Congress.
Yep. It's definitely up to Congress.
Yep. So, but with that, we've got to get out of here. So, folks, remember on YouTube, ACVN-TV 1776. For Pam Devaney, for Vincent Green, I'm Mike Swope. Thank you for joining us here on the American Conservative Values Network. Join us next time.